It can be hard out here for a Mega 10 fan. The groundbreaking, iconoclastic series of infernal JRPGs has long been eclipsed by its own child, Persona. Not only that, the passage of time has seen Persona itself undergo a drastic transformation, from a deft blend of adolescent angst with Lovecraftian horror into a bright, breezy, and horny escapist fantasy. With the runaway cultural success of Persona 4 in particular, the series changed forever, bagging high-profile tie-ins from anime series to luxury goods, culminating in a special trailer for the then-upcoming Persona 5 being broadcast onto Tokyo Tower. How rebellious can a work of art be when it's officially sanctioned by the largest metropolis in the world? Anyway, the JRPG media landscape changed forever, and every notable developer wanted a piece of that sweet, sweet Persona pie. Valkyria Chronicles 2 transplanted its setting to a military academy, as did Falcom's cult hit Trails of Cold Steel, a series within a series within a series, which only just wrapped up fairly recently. Falcom even double-dipped with another far more egregious example, the uneven Tokyo Xanadu. This one's particularly crazy. Not only is it a school RPG, but the whole macro plot of Persona 4 is compressed into a single mid-game chapter, color palette and all. I guess it would be actionable if anybody cared. Even Mega 10 proper took cues from Persona. 2016 sorta sequel, Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse, featured a cast of outsized human companions with a focus on saving the world with
the power of friendship.
There's also a Bikini Beach episode and a horny 13-year-old ninja girl. Around the same time, Atlus collaborated with Nintendo and multimedia conglomerate Avex on Tokyo Mirage Sessions, a supposed melding of Mega 10 and Fire Emblem, which turned out to be not really either of those, but rather a vehicle for musicians signed with Avex. One of the most prominent characteristics of being a
certified Megami Tensei enjoyer
is a dissatisfaction with absolutely everything the franchise produces. A pointing finger, a shake of the head, a fruitless muttering that the series just isn't punk anymore. Not like the good old days. A golden era, depending on who you ask, is anywhere between 10 and 30 years ago. The quintessential Mega 10 fan will never be satisfied, can never be satisfied. Because as much as they laud SMT for its status as a groundbreaking iconoclast, they cling to a rose-colored vision of a distant past. It's me. I'm the unsatisfiable Mega 10 fan. I mean, look at this. I got the Mark of the Beast and everything. At the time of this video, Soul Hackers 2 is on the horizon. The surprise follow-up to a beloved 25-year-old dungeon crawler, which appears to be a blend of Persona 5 and Tokyo Mirage Sessions. Quite aesthetically derivative of any number of SMT-inspired JRPGs that released over the course of the past decade. There's those who love the trailer and those who loathe it, but both camps will undoubtedly be playing it on release day. Look, I get it. Kids these days don't want to be reminded that life sucks. They have enough problems already. As a big ol' weeb, I've noticed the way the wind's blowing. First towards isekai, a desire to leave our world for a fantasy setting, and then towards iyashike, healing-type isekai, where the desire is not only to enter a fantasy world, but to live an idyllic, slow-paced life within it. Like becoming an RPG town's beloved pharmacist. I really do get it. I've been working for more than half my life, I don't have any money or any time, and I don't even really have anything to show for it. There is value in this laid-back fantasy. But when it comes to demonology RPGs, some of us want a little bit of grittiness. When we play Persona 1 or Shin Megami Tensei If, and the takeaway is, damn, being a teenager's gross and high school sucks, we go, hell yeah. You get a sense of solidarity, one of comradeship. You feel seen, understood. Somebody else out there knows what it's like. and it touches your heart. Enter Furyu, the cover band of JRPGs. If there was ever an outlet more deserving of the name Tokyo RPG Factory than the actual Tokyo RPG Factory, it's Furyu. They're here to trot out sound-alikes of the hits of the 90s, with all your favorite JRPG creators giving their blessing. Here's Unchained Blades with Grandia alumni Takashi Hino and Toshio Akahashi. Legend of Legacy with numerous Saga developers and even Masato Kato. Alliance Alive with Suikoden's own Yoshitaka Murayama. Of course, auteur theory is a load of bunk, and the presence of one or two big names from your nostalgic faves does not a masterpiece make. The team responsible for making Grandia so special, for example, has long since disbanded and moved on. None of Furyu's games are outstanding, or even particularly good, but they do sell. Well enough to put out one or two per year even. Whether this is due to each game's individual qualities, or due to Furyu's tendency towards star power, I really couldn't say, but I suspect the latter might have something to do with it. Furyu's actually had a crack at capturing that old Mega 10 magic a few times. They brought Persona's own Satomi Tadashi aboard for the Caligula Effect 1 and 2, a pair of RPGs about being imprisoned within a virtual adolescence by a Hatsune Miku figure. It sounds like a wry nudge in Persona's ribs, but that's not what we're talking about today. In mid-2021, as Atlus was preparing the worldwide release of Shin Megami Tensei 5, an auspicious announcement came down the pike from Furyu. Monark, a quote-unquote new school RPG, which aims to bring a bit of darkness back to the adolescent adventure genre. Stop me if you heard this one before. A prestigious academy finds itself enveloped in mist and isolated from the world, where a sadistic, power-mad student council rules over the pupils and faculty with an iron fist. In order to get to the bottom of this mystery, our heroes draw on the power of their personalities to do battle with otherworldly revenants contacted through their mobile phones. If that sounds a lot like Persona 1's Snow Queen quest or Shin Megami Tensei If, there's a reason for that. Assembled by director Hayashi Fuyuki, Monarch's staff includes Mega 10 co-creator Suzuki Kazunari, scenario planner Ito Ryutaro, and composer Masako freakin' Tsukasa, the man who codified Mega 10's sound with jams like this. Even Nishitani Aya, the author of the original Megami Tensei light novels, was on board in an advisory capacity. But if you're familiar with any of that source material, maybe it's good he had a light touch here. But the point is, that's one hell of a team they've assembled. Hayashi even stated in an interview with Famitsu, "We got excited talking about Shin Megami Tensei If, and how nowadays there's no games like it, so we constructed the prototype for Monarch with consideration to the worldview and atmosphere we thought was important to preserve in a school RPG." To top it all off, it's being developed by Lankaris, the studio behind Etrian Odyssey and Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey. I love a small-scale RPG story. When the onus is removed from traveling the globe to halt a world-ending threat, you can end up with something really special, like the highly localized conflicts of the Legend of Heroes games. Or if we really want to zoom in and set the bar as high as the ceiling, the absolute triumph that is Disco Elysium's Revachol. Constricting your story within boundaries is rarely a bad thing, so why not set an RPG entirely within the grounds of a campus? It might even turn out breezy, something that Shin Megami Tensei If wasn't really. Is Monarch breezy? Oh, come on, man. Over the course of this video, we're going to examine how Monarch turned out, along with a full story summary. Be warned, this means there will be full spoilers, and also content warning for some heavy subject matter like bullying, stalking, self-harm, and teen suicide. Monarch is a PS3-esque-looking game set within Shin Mikado Academy, a vaguely, but not explicitly, Catholic private high school. A prestigious institution that attracts many international students, attendees have started to witness supernatural events on campus. Ghost sightings, a toxic mist that has detrimental effects on one's sanity, malevolent phone calls capable of spiriting away anyone who dares answer. Before anyone has a chance to take these sightings seriously, a magical barrier covers the school, not allowing anyone to enter or leave. We open on our protagonist, recognizable from the promo art, as he's unceremoniously dropped into a phantom zone full of skeletons. Outnumbered and outgunned, he dies before our eyes, and we hear a feminine voice lament his failure.
Disc. Another failure. What a shame. The world truly is a cruel and irrational place. This little one just isn't good enough.
Firstly, look at this dude. It's like somebody hit the inverse colors button on the Persona 1 protagonist. He's even got a pierced ear. They knew what they were doing here. But he appears once more, this time with conspicuously red eyes, in the office of a well-dressed lady calling herself Yoru. Our point of view is staticky, glitchy, a recurring motif in Monarch to signal that something isn't quite right. Yoru gives the player a personality test, where your answers decide your affinity for each of the 7 deadly sins.
Have you ever looked at a naughty website?
Sins, despite their name, are not considered to explicitly be negative traits. They're more a reflection of one's desire or drive. And before Yoru bids you adieu, she encourages you to cultivate your sins. We'll talk about exactly what that means a little bit later.
Wake up. Please, open your eyes.
We open again on the school. A gaggle of looky-loos, led by Student Council President Nozomi Hinata, heard reports of a student collapsed in the mist and came across our hero. The youngest of the entourage, a middle schooler named Chiyo Aikawa, claims us as her older brother. The protagonist's name is chosen by the player, so she explains away your difference in surnames due to being a non-traditional family unit. Our hero is, you guessed it, completely amnesiac, and has no way to corroborate this. Chiyo's got a non-specified respiratory issue and needs you to be a super big brother, combining the kawaii Imoto-chan archetype with the Victorian consumptive heroine trope for maximum moe. Where have I seen this before? Oh god. Along with our new friends, including the lazy school doctor Kakeru Hasegawa, we head back to the infirmary, but a migraine-inducing phone call brings the party to their knees.
What's that sound? My head hurts.
Everyone, stay close!
A blend of an annoying ringtone with a malfunctioning modem, these mysterious tones whisk everybody away to a pocket dimension. It's the surreal battlefield that we saw from the opening, replete with sword-wielding skeletons. It's all too much for Chiyo's delicate constitution, and she catches a case of the vapors and faints. Unsure whether they should fight or flee, a really gross stuffed bunny descends from the sky. He's speaking in riddles, and our hero just grabs him by the ears and tells him to help or shut up.
Wait! Unhand me, you uncouth, unkind underling! The impudence instantly interrupting my interlude.
He's really not playing around here, and it's kind of great. Speaking in rhyme, or if you're playing in Japanese, a haughty, regal tone that belies his absurd appearance, this is Vanitas, supposedly the monarch of vanity, who offers to lend us his power. With little recourse, we accept, and we're impaled by these phantom crystals. It looks painful as hell, but we're reborn as this goth hip-hop king. Big medallion, little biggie crown, and all. The ivory moon boots aren't very cool, though. This is your Imagigear, the deepest depths of your personality made manifest. This is what gives you the power to fight these supernatural threats. And with this, we enter our tutorial battle. Monarch is a small-scale tactics RPG in which the player usually matches 3 to 6 of their party members up against a battalion of revenants. Battlefields are usually a twisty-turny jaunt from A to B, and sometimes there's status-inflicting hazards dotted along the path. These are pretty easy to avoid, but since they affect friends and foes alike, they can be used for a minor tactical advantage. There's no mana points here. All combat skills cost hit points, and all authorities, essentially spells, cast from sanity, represented by an ever-increasing counter called Mad. Allies can defer their turn to another party member with the trade-off of increasing the receiver's Mad. The cost doubled with each consecutive deferral per battle. Let a party member's Mad reach 100% and they go, mad, entering a berserk state in which they attack everything around them before dropping dead within 3 turns. Allies and enemies alike can enter a state of madness, allowing the player to use sanity loss as a tactical advantage. Yeah, it didn't feel great to say that out loud. There has been a lot of discourse about how video games handle mental health, particularly the portrayal of mental health conditions to invoke fear. This is obviously an important ongoing conversation. Speaking as someone with his own mental health conditions, they should be destigmatized and should not be carelessly exploited. However, in the case of Monarch, this madness is caused by an outside entity, a motif of harmful sensation, not unlike a Lovecraft or a Junji Ito story. Terrifying powers beyond our comprehension, capable of disastrous effects on the human mind. I feel like this is less harmful than the quote-unquote insane asylum tropes, as the fear does not come from the individual with the mental health condition, but from the corrupting force capable of stripping our agency from us. Unfortunately, Monarch also dips into these tropes. There's a whole dungeon where a group of mad students are trying to lead the sane kids away to, quote-unquote, make them go crazy. It's a real gross 1-2 punch, which portrays a crazy person as sinister and their condition contagious. Look, anyway, I'm speaking from a position of relative privilege, so, I don't know, take this goofball's opinion with a grain of salt. Real-head RPG degenerates will recognize Monarch's battle system from 2015's Lost Dimension, another Furyu and Lankar's joint about superpowered teens fighting terrorists while rooting out traitors in their midst. It's all here, from deferrals to sanity, here counting down as San instead of counting up as Mad. It's not just duplicated wholesale, though. There's a few new twists. Humans are able to strengthen their resolve to increase their awakening gauge, and once they're fully awake, they can enter an enhanced state with hefty stat boosts. The Mad gauge is reduced to 0, and all authorities can be cast for free. They also gain access to an EX command. This is basically a limit break. These moves vary from character to character. They can be offensive in nature, or they can grant an invaluable buff. Kokoro here bestows perfect critical hit chance with hers. Using an EX move ends the awakening state immediately, otherwise it wears off after around 3 turns. It's in the player's best interest to make the most of awakening while it's active, and then finish by firing off the EX move on the final turn. This isn't just for you, though. Monarch's handful of human antagonists are also able to awaken, and navigating this is the key to overcoming their challenges. You may have noticed I mentioned human party members, so this is a pretty good time to talk about how sins work. As mentioned previously, sins are not negative. You can see them fanning out from the center of the main character's status menu here, a little bit like a stat table. Your sin with the highest value determines which legion you start with. Yeah, those skeletons you've been fighting. Legion are demons who serve one who bears an authority, and there's one for each of the 7 sins. Each has different abilities, and at set points the story will bestow another upon you in order of your highest sin level. Lust and Pride are 2 of the most effective legion, They're a black mage and a white mage respectively, and neither really have a human analog. Sin levels go up at the end of each battle, depending on combat actions taken. I gotta admit, I'm not too au fait with how Monarch calculates this, but the biggest boosts are bestowed by answering psych evaluation quizzes. Spread across campus are 3 students obsessed with pop psychology, each of whom allows you to take a personality test. A little bit like Yoru's big test at the beginning of the game, but each consists of a single question. Hey, let me ask you something. Do you think personality tests are weird and bad? Well, guess what? They really are here. One of Monarch's central themes is that the future is limitless, but in these tests, the infinitely broad spectrum of the human experience is, essentially, boiled down to a sort of CEO grindset mentality, carnal, sociopathic. It's as if the unseen narrator expects players to pursue adulthood as corporate suits. A common career trajectory, to be sure, but is that really all there is? In case you're wondering if the game is making some kind of statement on this rigid life path, it's hard to say. The tests are presented at face value, and they're not really commented on. This one about judging your business acumen based on your preference for boobs, butts, or feet is especially weird. Our big brave big brother has a unique trick up his sleeve too. Vanity has bestowed him the power of resonance. Resonance allows our hero to link up with an ally or an enemy for a set number of turns, sharing buffs, debuffs, status effects, and even awakenings. These can be used to share the wealth between party members, or to quickly lift a boss's awakening and defuse it through an EX move. Eventually you gain a couple of AoE resonance effects, which will allow you to share conditions with the entire party. This can allow you to curb stomp an entire encounter, but care must be taken because a single charm spell is all it takes to ruin a fully resonated party. Resonance is also the only way to enter the coveted enlightened state, which occurs when a character's resonance gauge and madness gauge reach 100% at the same time. Enlightened is basically a super awakening with its own special EX move. It's a viable strategy to push one of your allies past the madness threshold, awaken with another, and then resonate with both to enlighten everybody. There's no one true method to get through Monarch's tougher battles, but playing with awakening, resonance, and enlightenment, either together or separately, can produce some interesting strategies. So we get through our first battle. Vanitas refuses to answer any of our questions, and we're whisked back to the hallowed halls of Shin Mikado, rattled, but no worse for wear.
This is... the academy? We made it back! Is everyone alright?
Monarch consists of 2 lengthy acts separated by an intermission. In Act 1, we meet Yoru again, except this time she introduces herself as Sora Jingu, the school dean. Sora is surprisingly well versed in the otherworld and is ready to dump some lore. It's a metaphysical plane where demons rule, and some of these are monarchs, demons of the highest order. She was aware of those related to the 7 sins, but is surprised to learn of Vanity, a previously unheard of aberration. Humans are capable of making pacts with monarchs to receive their reality-bending powers in the form of an authority. To make a pact, one requires the ability to perceive the otherworld, a strong ego, a cause, and a wish. The use of authorities gives rise to distortions in our world, which are observable around campus. The mist, the mysterious phone calls, and the barrier preventing egress are all byproducts and side effects of each pact-bearer's ability. Sora reveals that the Jingu family discovered the existence of demons many years prior, and have strived to maintain balance ever since. She knows there are 7 pact-bearers, plus us, on campus, and asks us to kindly hunt them down and neutralize them. With our mission accepted, Sora dubs you and Nozomi the true student council, those who truly have the well-being of your fellow students at heart. To break a pact-bearer's authority, their ideals must be shattered. These are represented by 3 crystals found in the otherworld, one for desire, reason, and will. When all 3 are shattered, their pact will be voided, their authority revoked, and the mist in their domain will dissipate. There's actually quite a bit of cool lore here about how pacts work for you to find. Littered around the school are collectibles called the Cromwell Reports, a series of occult research documents penned during the 1970s by a mysterious figure with the initials HC. The best of these are the reports that detail observed cases of pacts and authorities. There's this wild one about the Pride Pact, in which a sadistic teenage girl has been severing the fingers of a boy she likes and then using her authority to grow them back so she can sever them again and again. When they finally contain the girl, she's got buckets of fingers, all matching the boy's DNA, but his hands are intact and he has no memories of ever being mutilated. These are reminiscent of Remedy's Control, or their inspiration, the better parts of the SCP wiki, and there's tragically not enough of it. It's a shame that Monarch didn't lean harder into this angle, because there's a lot of potential for exciting body horror here. We're also introduced to Yugo Jingu, Sora's husband and the steward of the academy. He's dressed rather priestly, in sharp contrast to his wife's form-fitting femme fatale look. Apparently, the couple have watched over the academy for decades. Yugo appears to be in his 50s or 60s, and Nozomi mentions it's almost demonic how youthful Sora looks. Act 1 is split into a handful of character chapters in which you partner with another student to take down the pact-bearer menacing a particular school building. Nozomi's chapter must be completed first, as you're both trapped in the main building, but after that you can choose the remaining 3 in any order. Nozomi's frankly kind of a bore. A mix of Persona 3's Mitsuru and Yukari. She's goody-goody, prone to fright, and believes in always doing her best. The embodiment of lawful good, the least interesting character alignment. She's not unlikable or repellent. There's just very little to say about her for much of the story. Nozomi can also harness in a magic ear, despite not being a pact-bearer, where she becomes a lance-wielding knight.
You dirty-minded sadist! I bet you have a thing for your sister, too, and your skin is immaculate! Wait, that last one wasn't much of an insult, was it?
Okay, forget what I said. I kind of like Nozomi now.
Not on my watch. Christ. Trying to fight these lame brains is gonna get you nowhere fast, you know?
Here's Ryotaro Date. You can tell from his scarf and cowboy boots that he's the bad boy of Shin Mikado Academy. Held back a year, he tends to solve issues with his fists rather than his wits, which has made him an infamous figure around the school. That doesn't mean he doesn't have his share of fans. The unofficial Date Club is comprised of girls and boys alike who admire this bodacious cowboy. Ryotaro is the pact-bearer of gluttony. His authority allows him to temporarily steal the abilities of others. Knowing full well that you intend to defeat all pact-bearers, you enter an uneasy alliance, but his rough demeanor belies his heart of gold. In battle, he dual-wields pistols, and has authorities which allow him to steal items as well as buffs from enemies, making him somewhat analogous to a thief class, but with a little more firepower.
There you are. I've been waiting.
Next up is Kokoro Tsurugadai, the pact-bearer of Sloth. Hey, wait a second. Oh. Our emotionless girl archetype, our Rei Ayanami. Cold, clinical, obsessed with safety and security. She just wants to quietly read in the library, eating yakisoba, walling herself off so she never suffers nor causes emotional pain. With her high IQ and low social skills, Kokoro can be read as a stereotypical portrayal of somebody on the spectrum, but since this is never explicitly stated, maybe I'm setting myself up for a cancellation here.
Political correctness. Cancel culture を発動中。Cancel culture を発動中。
Kokoro's authority gives her future sight, allowing her to always take the path of least resistance. From her appearance, you might expect her to be a combat mage, but she's really more of a support class with a wide range of stat buffs. She's also a bit of a Fujoshi.
You think so?
The mere sight of you together is picturesque. Your dainty, classical beauties are reminiscent of fine art.
Uh-huh.
Allow me to take a couple shot of the two of you sometime.
No, I don't think I like where this is going.
Not to worry. Chio can take the picture. I am certain it would turn out lovely. There is no reason to be apprehensive.
Missed. Moron.
No way!
Finally, we have Shinya Yuta, our beautiful, androgyne, angsty goth boy. The youngest of the bunch, Shinya's still in middle school, but he's been summoned to Shin Mikado by his adoptive parents, the Jingus. Fiercely loyal to his family, his goal is to neutralize all pact bearers, including you, if it comes down to it. Naturally, Shinya is not a pact bearer, but he is basically a ninja, which is pretty funny. On the battlefield, he wields a scythe, hits hard, and excels at inflicting status ailments. To put it bluntly, he's a hard shell hiding a soft and gooey boy.
Huh? What?
We've also got some allies in our corner. We previously mentioned Sora and Yugo, as well as Kakeru, our lazy yet attentive doctor. And there's also Dr. Neko Yasuragi, who runs the infirmary alongside Kakeru. She insists that everybody call her Dr. Shironeko because she thinks it's cuter. She can be pretty sassy, but she's obviously devoted to the well-being of every student. The pact bearers themselves are a real rogues gallery. They're not in cooperation. They're more like feudal lords, each ruling over a different school building. And they can be genuinely chilling, but they're also not wholly unsympathetic. Your first antagonist is Kurama Hitotsubashi, the self-proclaimed student council president. Always flanked by goons, he's recently usurped Nozomi's position and is taking it way too seriously. Kurama has taken control of the main building and has declared the mist off-limits, supposedly in the best interests of his peers. Kurama is, quite obviously, the pact-bearer of pride, his authority allowing him to brainwash others. He's a lot of fun because he absolutely freaking sucks. Dressed in an ostentatious caped uniform in brilliant white, he's like a horror story version of Mendo from Urusei Yatsura, just the worst little nerd turned haughty dictator. A miniature fascist strongman here to rule over what he perceives to be his own personal micronation. When you challenge a pact bearer, you'll also fight their monarch alongside them. Kurama's monarch is Superbia, who... Alright, hang on, let's just camp out on this one for a little bit. The embodiment of pride is a slender nurse with wings, wearing a cape, surgical mask, and peep-toe thigh-highs, wielding some kind of giant medieval torture pliers. She's also wearing a Lolita bonnet, with a second set of wings sprouting from that. Over-designed, thy name is Superbia. She hits a lot of moe and fetish iconography, but nothing about her says pride. All of the monarchs suffer from similar levels of over-design. They definitely stand out from the thousands of skeletons you're gonna fight, but their hodgepodge designs are so busy and try-hard that they're ultimately unmemorable.
Let me go! Get away from me! Just leave me alone! That chance? You're just trying to make a break for it! No, that's not it. I'm getting a chill. A chill?
Let me take a guess. You didn't want to kill him. Oh, what a wonderful friendship. How he pisses me off.
Kokoro is up against Subaru Ikariya, the pact bearer of wrath. A gloomy first year obsessed with the occult, he was relentlessly bullied by his entire class and eventually tossed from a third-floor window. Comatose in the nurse's office, his authority allows him to manifest as an Ikiryo, the ghost of a living being, able to travel through electrical currents and possess students at will. Subaru believes himself to be a powerful magus and begins a reign of terror, violently murdering the classmates who wronged him. There's a lot of comparisons to be made with Hideo Hazama, the central antagonist of Shin Megami Tensei If, who in turn was kind of a malevolent reimagining of Digital Devil Story's own Akemi Nakajima. He's become obsessed with Kokoro, mistakenly viewing her social awkwardness as equivalent to his own misanthropy, and puts her on a romantic pedestal. Kind of an incel creep, he really has no clue, and she takes him to task for it before you defeat him for good. Subaru's Monarch is Ira of Wrath, a muscle boy in a saw mask, a dress shirt, and a sarong. He's got big biceps, so you know he's an angry, punchy lad. Accented by red spikes, he's one of the less busily designed monarchs, but also a little uninspired.
Ganging up on a fragile little girl? 3 against 1 even? You truly are despicable. Ganging up on a fragile little girl? Ganging up on a fragile little girl? Ganging up on a fragile little girl?
Shinya faces off against Akane Tono, the pact-bearer of lust who's holding the club building hostage. She's a jilted lover seeking revenge against her ex-boyfriend Haruka, the captain of the baseball team. Her authority gives her power over temperature, which she's begun to use to burn the baseball team alive. We find ourselves allied with Akane's twin sister Sumire, a friendly and flirtatious girl with a reputation for promiscuity. A serial monogamist, her current boyfriend happens to be none other than Haruka himself. Eventually, it transpires that the sisters have been pulling the old switcheroo, and they're actually the co-pact bearers of lust. Sumire's own desire is incestuous romantic love for her own twin, a confused state born out of their unstable home life. Akane is disgusted by Sumire's feelings, but still uses her to enact vengeance, a fact that deeply upsets Shinya. The Tono sisters' monarch is Luxuria of Lust, and this design is basically Superbia again. Fits a little bit more appropriately with lust than it does with pride, a fetish made with a Hans Belmer doll-esque midsection, equipped with a scorpion tail. She's gonna sting ya.
People'll hate you, Steve, if you're too stingy.
She lazily holds a kiseru pipe, evoking geisha mannerisms.
Mr. Tsumabuki, it hurts so much.
What a pitiful, pitiful sight. Oh, the humanity, the world, and God are ever so cruel.
Finally, there's Ryutaro's nemesis, the pact-bearer of envy, the elderly and frail Mr. Tsumabuki. Ruling over the second-year building, his beloved students have fallen to a mysterious illness, causing them all unbearable pain. He offers them succor in the form of thoughts and prayers, but in actuality the cause is his authority. He's able to impose his physical condition on anyone within his domain. A godly man who once strove to help others, Tsumabuki resents his students for their youth and health. Since he's positively ancient and implied to be suffering from late-stage cancer, the overwhelming pain causes most of the students to collapse on the spot. His pact of envy does not allow him to make his own life better, but to instead make the lives of others worse. He's like Mother Teresa, the embodiment of misery loves company. He warns his students that anyone who leaves the building will make the illness worse for the others, and he's not lying. Anyone who leaves recovers immediately, but Tsumabuki's authority is then divided between fewer students, upping their suffering. He's an absolutely diabolical sicko, and my personal favorite. Tsumabuki's monarch is Invidia of Envy, and I don't know what's going on with this design. They're a lithe, feminine figure with a crown of thorns that descends down the body to form these kind of shibari knots around their breasts and thighs. They're wearing a fashionable little hooded half jacket, together with high heels and big gauntlets, a furry wolf tail composed of flames, and they top it all off by wielding a scythe that's twice their size. Your guess is as good as mine. Each of the pack-bearers' misty domains are ostensibly Monarch's dungeons, and their drab color palettes and limited camera angles evoke a feeling of claustrophobia. Monarch never wants you to forget that you're a prisoner of Shin Mikado. When inside, the view from the windows is just a brilliant, blinding white light, and when you're outside, the camera is at a 45-degree angle above your head, unable to be moved from the vertical plane. Your hero's eyes are cast ever downward, never seeing the sky. It's an effective use of limited resources to stoke an unrelenting feeling of oppression. The unsettled, students severely affected by the mist, wander the halls babbling to themselves or obsessing over fruitless tasks. Likewise, as you spend time in the mist, your mad counter goes up, and you're susceptible to receiving a death call. If answered, this will send you into a battle against level 99 foes, and if ignored, your mad will rise sharply, and the unsettled around you will start to panic. Being caught by a panicked student instantly raises your mad to 100%, sending you back to the infirmary. You don't lose any progress, key items are retained, puzzles remain solved, but you do need to make your way back. Damned if you do, damned if you don't? Well, not quite. Every time you enter a new misty area, Vanitas gives you a phone number for its precipice, a level-appropriate battle that, once completed, permanently halts death calls for that particular floor. Hit points are fully restored after each battle, but your mad level remains as it was. As mad increases, you start to see glitchy distortions in the world, and you hear what sounds like an endlessly ringing phone or a school fire alarm. Speaking from experience, it's actually not a bad metaphor for the auspices of an anxiety attack, an inescapable building feeling that just something isn't right and you could break at any moment. A trip back to Dr. Kakeru reduces your mad back to 0, and he also gives you 5 mental stabilizers for reducing mad when in the field or in combat. You can only hold 5 at a time, and he replenishes these whenever you visit him. Damn, I could have used some mental first aid when I was at school. But it's pretty funny to think about the good doctor just handing out antipsychotics willy-nilly, like he's treating a skinned knee. At first blush, Monarch has a surprisingly low number of encounters for a JRPG. Combat only takes place in the Otherworld, which is always contacted by phone. As death calls are always meant to be avoided, this technically leaves precipice calls and ideals as the only mandatory battles. In practice, however, Monarch is absolutely overloaded with battles against scrubs. Each battle grants you spirit, essentially experience points, but these are deposited into a communal pool from which the player distributes them between their party members. You use spirit to buy or upgrade abilities from each character's skill tree. Each purchase increases their stats and their level. As expected, these abilities become very expensive, and by the end of the game you're trying to keep 12 characters on an even keel. Spirit also doubles as currency, with which you can buy healing items from Vanitas. As you progress, you'll find special grinding phone numbers which provide a bit more spirit than other battlefields. Naturally, the bulk of Monarch's duration is spent grinding away, and the game is fully aware. Anytime you finish an elective battle, you're gallingly asked if you'd like to immediately play it over again. But you also need to grind for vessels, equipment for your legion, in the form of helmets, chestplates, and greaves. Sometimes you'll get these after battles, but you'll also want to occasionally call up the special vessel grinding numbers you come across every so often for the best possible equipment. Equipping a legion with a full set of adjective-bearing vessels will upgrade them into a noble, giving substantial permanent stat boosts that remain even after the gear is removed. Vessels come in increasing levels of rarity, with phone numbers to match, and there's no guarantee you'll get what you're after any given battle, so yeah. The grinding gets to a point where you'll probably just throw your hands up and say, I don't have time for this. Unless you're me, and for some reason you have a lot of time for this. Don't live like me. But anyway, when you're not grinding for whatever, you and your partner are exploring the misty floors of the Academy in search of a means to reach a pact-bearer's ideal, denoted by a pile of smartphones acting as a conduit to the other world. Oftentimes, an adventure-gamey lock-and-key puzzle stands between you and your goal, and many of these are spooky little tales involving the students and staff of Shin Mikado. This first one involves best friends Reina and Miyu, who entered the mist as a test of courage and became separated. Reina's blocking the hall and not allowing anyone to pass because she's in conversation with a locker she believes to be Miyu. As you gather the notes they wrote each other, you'll learn the mist affected their senses of direction, causing them to lose their way, and eventually their minds. Once you locate and read all of these notes, you can address Reina to inform her that the locker is, in fact, not Miyu. As she runs off distressed, seeking her friend, that's when you notice the bad smell coming from the locker, and the flies buzzing around it. A final note from Miyu details her last moments as she dies of dehydration, the implication being, for whatever reason, the locker became her sarcophagus. It's a pretty by-the-numbers micro-horror story, but it's kind of a fun one. However, some of these stories get into some real... When you take on the Pact-Bearer of Lust, a recurring motif of their dungeon is stalking. You'll come across a student who asks you to help coax his girlfriend out of a classroom she's locked herself in, and eventually you find out that he's not her boyfriend but her stalker, and you bop him on the head in a cutscene to give the poor girl a chance to escape, with the ultimate goal being to access the room she's no longer barricaded. One can argue that these are thematically appropriate with the sin of lust, and they add flavor to what's ultimately rote lock-and-key puzzles, but it's also kind of crass to systematize stalking into a gameplay puzzle to be solved. But if we bring things back to the very first dungeon with Nozomi, let's take a look at what happens on the roof. A teacher invites his third-year students to a graduation ceremony in which they all take a group dive off the roof of the school. En masse teen suicide is honestly some pretty full-on imagery, and a territory into which one should not tread lightly. However, with the exception of the teacher, Mr. Sato, none of the students who graduate alongside him are named or present in the student handbook. Their presence a macabre haunted house attraction, existing only for shock value as the player observes their deaths. It's a cheap move, a way for Monarch to trade in transgressive imagery without having to sweat the details or consequences. Put a pin in this one, folks, because this game's lack of consequence is going to come back in a big bad way later. When you shatter a Pact-Bearer's first two ideals, you get a little glimpse into your antagonist's mind as their mist dissipates. For example, Kurama's first two ideals relay the expected. He believes his peers can't be trusted to think for themselves, so he wishes to have the absolute power to guide them. When you reach his third ideal, this is where the Pact-Bearer and Monarch challenge you together in a last-ditch attempt to maintain their power. Boss encounters see you fight your way through a bunch of Legion to reach the Pact-Bearer and Monarch at the far end of the map. Monarchs are stronger and more able than their Legion counterparts, but it's the Pact-Bearer you truly need to look out for. Just as human as you, they can and will awaken to boost all of their stats, and an awakened foe can usually one-shot a party member with even a regular attack. With the boss field cleared of opponents, the final ideal is shattered, voiding their pact. In Kurama's case, we get our final glimpse into his mind, where he takes a sympathetic turn. As a child, he witnessed his best friend die in a horrible traffic accident, powerless to do anything. His friend's grieving mother lashed out at him in the heat of the moment, blaming him for the death of her child. Fully traumatized and feeling fully responsible, Kurama wished to have the power to keep everyone around him safe from harm. An impossible desire which, taken to its logical conclusion, saw him become the control freak that we just defeated. With the breaking of his ideals, so too breaks his hold on the minds of his peers. His reign has ended, but he's not irredeemable. Of course he's not. He's a stupid teenager who did some bad stuff and got a well-deserved punch in the face for it. Whom amongst us, right? But before we can say another word to him, he loses consciousness, and we're brought back from the otherworld. Bringing Kurama back to the infirmary, we learn from Sora that shattering one's ideals puts them into a comatose state. Though not permanent, once they come to, they'll forever be missing a part of their soul, crushed along with their dream. She kept this from you because she knew it would give you pause. Sure enough, Nozomi grapples with the implications of what you've done. Once you've completed the remaining 3 character chapters, we enter Act 1's finale. The Pact-Bearers of Pride, Envy, Lust, and Wrath have been neutralized, and the Pact-Bearers of Gluttony and Sloth, Ryutaro and Kokoro respectively, have allied with you. That only leaves one sin unaccounted for: greed. Sora's tracked the last of the Mist to the old school building on the far side of campus. Although faint, their presence can't be ignored, so Sora sends you off to investigate. Before we can even reach the old school building, the garden path before it is covered in mist and filled with the unsettled. The gate to the building is locked, but as you explore, you find an unsettled girl named Shiori. She's standing next to a monument built to honor all students who tragically died before graduation. She's got the spare key, but she's distressed that she can't remember the name of one of the deceased, a second-year boy she had feelings for. She went to the monument to jog her memory, but found that the name was chipped off. His school ID number remains, so she asked that you seek his identity on her behalf. It sounds like a simple lock and key puzzle, the likes of which Monarch has presented countless times up to this point, but things get a little interesting here. If you fully explored the second-year building earlier, you probably noticed a memorial bouquet of rosemary left on a student's desk. The student's name isn't listed, but the bouquet was from Chiyo Aikawa, your little sister. With the student ID and the word rosemary in hand, you can run a search in the computer lab to come up with a student named Takamori Suzuki. Suzuki was the lead editor of the Shin Mikado school newspaper, which you've likely come across as you've explored. He was particularly interested in the 7 School Mysteries, a mainstay of Japanese school-based horror, and a lot of Suzuki's coverage of the mysteries line up with this. But one of his stories sounds familiar, a cursed phone call that, if answered, spirits you away to another dimension. Suzuki's profile describes him as a devoted big brother who died in an accident, big scare quotes around accident. Now, if you're anything like me, this might make you think back to Monarch's very first scene, where our protagonist, Sans Red Eyes, is dropped into the other world only to perish immediately. Could your true identity be Takamori Suzuki? Or are you some other being wearing his face? Maybe even a mix of the two? We won't have an answer to that for quite some time, but I want you to keep it in mind. With that, you can head back to Shiori, give her the name Takamori Suzuki, and she'll in turn give you the key that you need to enter the old building. But there's a few other oddities you can pick up when completing this request. There's 2 other names on the monument worth noticing. First is Reiko Inze. Like Suzuki's memorial bouquet, you may have also spotted Reiko in the second-year building. While there's not anything unique about her appearance, she's hard to forget. Her profile in the student handbook is a collection of strange symbols, the implication being that Reiko is a lingering ghost. Yes, that means ghosts exist in Monarch's world, and hey, why not? The second name listed is a bit more subtle, Mitsuru Hasegawa. You probably won't think anything of this at first blush until you remember that Hasegawa is also the surname of Dr. Kakeru, who frequently goes into diatribes about the importance of sibling bonds. Weird, right? Well, anyway. You unlock the gate, but before you can enter the building, you find the first ideal outside. Once we destroy it, we're given our first glimpse of the Greed Pact-Bearer. Though obscure, they appear to be an adult male, surrounded by a clock motif, and speaking of a wish to change the past and erase their constant sadness. After we crush their second ideal, we head back to the student council room to prepare for the final encounter. But before that, Dr. Shironeko has thrown a party for the TSC. There's sweets, cakes, beverages, and all your buddies are here, including the Jingus and Dr. Kakeru. By process of elimination, our protagonist, and likely you, the player, have noticed that there's something up with Dr. Kakeru. You try to have a talk with him, but before you can press him further...
Let's change the subject. How about romance? I've got...
What was that?
It came from the infirmary.
You all rush to the infirmary, but before Kakeru can join you, Sora stops him. Or rather, Yoru does. Kakeru obviously knows her and finds her quite exasperating. He rhetorically asks if she could have shown up at a more convenient time and place, to which she replies,
Don't be absurd, Dr. Kakeru. Of course I can't. I'm not you, after all.
She makes allusions to a number of loops, but states he's outlived his usefulness and he's simply in the way of her child. As she begins to glow with power, we cut to the infirmary, where each of the pack-bearers we previously defeated have woken up, bewildered and frightened. None of them know how they got there, nor can they remember what they were doing. Ryutaro uses some of his power of gluttony to sap their energy, effectively sedating them. Sora enters the infirmary, claiming her delay was due to a busy spell. Did I seriously say busy when I meant dizzy? I wrote dizzy. I knew it was dizzy. Sounds like I said busy. I meant dizzy. Just at that moment, a piercing sound reverberates through the school.
Nobody move.
The sound of an authority being activated. Sora quickly calls upon her own power and generates a shield around the infirmary. And once the danger passes, the group ruminate on what just happened. And that's when Dr. Shironeko bursts into the infirmary in a panic. An impassable barrier has just appeared around the school. Time has, in fact, been rewound. The reveal of Greed's mastery over time and space initially raises a lot of scary questions. How long has time been looping? If you go see Reiko Inze on the roof of the second-year building, she speaks her first and last words 72 times. As an ethereal being, is she aware of and unaffected by the time loops? Have you really gone through this that many times? Are our heroes stuck in a never-ending cycle? Sora reassures you that no matter what, you're making progress. Only time in the school has been rewound, not in the other world. Ideals remain shattered, monarchs remain defeated. Ultimately, this doesn't really go anywhere, and in fact undercuts virtually all of Monarch's most striking moments. Remember a little while ago when I mentioned the group suicide, and I asked us to put a pin in Monarch's lack of consequences? Well, with time rewound to the start of the game, said suicides haven't happened, and since Kurama's pact will never fill the building with mist, they won't happen. That's right, the pact bearers haven't done anything. Subaru didn't murder his classmates, the twins didn't immolate the baseball club, Kurama and Sumabuki haven't caused anybody any suffering. Soon you can talk to them around the school, just like any other NPC. As their story roles have been erased, the return of the former pact bearers has no bearing. Each is absolutely heinous during their time in the spotlight, and we don't really get much of a look at their non-villainous personalities to really care about them. And I do mean non-villainous. With their pacts voided, their desires were erased, and all are now truly innocent, absolved of their sins not through any introspection or soul-searching, but from a rewind of the clock. There's no longer anything for them to reflect upon, and it's maddeningly unsatisfying. By this point, it's become abundantly clear that Dr. Kakeru is the pact-bearer of Greed. You head back to the old building for your final encounter, and indeed, he appears before you. Kakeru's authority gives him the power of spatio-chronokinesis, the ability to manipulate both time and space. His goal is to get out from behind the barrier and rewind time 10 years, just before the untimely death of his little brother. It's a pretty good encapsulation of the idea of greed. For Kakeru to get his second chance at a happy life, he'd effectively have to erase the past 10 years for every other person on the planet. It's a truly cursed goal, with no regard to the lives of anybody but his own. A more skillful narrative would see its heroes raise this with Kakeru, but monarchs just worry about how much mist would be generated if he used his powers on such a massive scale. I don't know about you, but being faced with the misery of being forced to go through school all over again, the mist would not be my main concern. Kakeru drops the bomb that you've been lied to. The barrier is not a byproduct of the mist. It was put in place by somebody with a strong authority, Dean Sora Jingu. He asks us to ally with him to defeat the Dean, but you know things won't go down that way. You engage Kakeru in combat as you would any other pack-bearer, along with his monarch, Avarisha, who takes the form of a nasty spider baby. It's one of the more effective monster designs, and it's pretty gross without being overly busy. I'm into it. When you defeat Kakeru, you notice he's bleeding, but not by your hand. He was dealt a mortal wound by Yoru, and his time was already running out by the time you challenged him. He dies before your eyes, and the party is despondent. The most powerful pact-bearer to date, the most terrifying foe, was ultimately a tormented but beloved figure for everybody. It's truly a sorrowful moment. With the death of Dr. Kakeru, there's only 3 pact-bearers left, Kokoro, Ryutaro, and the protagonist. Sora informs the TSC that something must be done about this, and the party disbands, now seemingly at odds with each other. And that's where Act 1 ends and the intermission begins. At Chio's urging to make peace, you visit your friends. They're all amenable towards you, but each is steadfast to their own ideals. After confirming that none of them will budge, disaster strikes. Chio finds herself pulled into the other world alone, and by the time you reach her, it's too late. Surrounded by Legion, Chio lays in a pool of blood, the second true victim of the anomalies. After dispatching Chio's killers, our hero has a complete breakdown. Each of your friends comes to visit to give their condolences, and finally Dr. Kakeru himself seems to appear, encouraging you to wake up and fight. This is how Act 2 begins, and hoo boy! It's all a bit downhill from here. So, at the start of Act 2, you need to decide which of your buddies you want to partner with. Once you've convinced your friend with a minor dialogue navigation puzzle, Sora requests that you split the task of taking care of the remaining pact-bearers. If you partner with Nozomi or Ryutaro, you learn that Kokoro has, in her pursuit of safety and security, agreed to banish herself to the other world forever. Seeing this as too sad to fathom, you head to the library to shatter her ideals, in the hopes that she, like the former pact-bearers, will eventually awaken. If you partner with Shinya or Kokoro, Sora instructs you to take down Ryutaro, who's made his lair in the school archives. He's unwilling to give up his pact, and he's playing for keeps. Naturally, you also fight their monarchs as well. Kokoro's monarch of Sleuth is Acedia, a priestly figure with what appears to be a donkey skull for a head. They're equipped with a mortar, not unlike Kokoro's cannon. Another design that's quite busy and fails to evoke Sloth, but I actually kind of like this one, at least aesthetically. Ryutaro's monarch is Gula of Gluttony, another of the many Bishoujo monarchs. She's kind of a sexy mosquito or a wasp wearing an ushanka and fishnet stockings. I kind of like this one too, because she's probably a comrade. Once you've crushed your beloved friend's ideals, Sora calls you in for a meeting. You have her gratitude for your hard work, but as you're the last pact-bearer, she must erase you. And with this sinister turn, we learn that Sora herself is also an aberrant pact-bearer. Holding the authority of woe, she has the power to alter existence. She claims she only uses her authority in the interest of what's best for the Academy, and urges you not to worry about your friends, as she'll also erase all memories that you ever existed in the first place. But before she can land the killing blow, Yugo comes in by chance, sometimes accompanied by Shinya, shocked that Sora would use her powers against one of her students. It's then that he has some sort of twinge in the back of his mind, as if he'd only just realized what he was saying. It's this distraction that allows Yoru to make her move.
I am Yoru.
In an explosion of inky black goo, Yoru emerges from Sora's body in a grody birthing ceremony. We learn who Yoru really is, the true desires of Sora made manifest, her unbridled id, now free in its own body. Depending on who you've partnered with, this scene's outcome varies. Yoru can flee as Sora asks that you track her down. Yoru can kill Sora outright and dare you to challenge her. And Sora can even kill Yoru. No matter what happens, your final antagonist will either be Yoru or Sora. No matter what route you're on, our hero ends up erased from existence after the final encounter, leaving their partner despondent. As you vanish from existence, a single leaf falls to the ground outside campus. And this is where Monarch reveals that it has zero confidence in its audience. As you float through the void, Kakeru appears before you, congratulating you on a job well done, but musing if there could have been another possible outcome. He sends you back to the start of Act 2, retaining your stats but without your memories, to partner with another friend in search of a better future. Monarch has pulled a bravely default. Kakeru's time manipulation is here to excuse the loop of forcing the same story beats and same battles 4 times over. Only then can you break the cycle and make it to the true finale. These scenarios would be relatively short, but your enemies jump up several levels with each successive loop, necessitating hours and hours of grinding just to keep up. It's pretty egregious. I'll summarize the most important bits that we learn across the 4 loops. The real Sora Jingu died of illness in the 1980s. This Sora's true identity is Tristia, the Monarch of Woe. Yugo is her pact bearer and asked that she revive Sora, but the best she could muster was to take her shape and live as a facsimile of his young wife. Yoru, being Tristia's id, is her true identity of a monarch, repressed to the breaking point as she lived under the false guise of humanity. Our hero isn't actually Chio's brother, but rather a homunculus, the first success in a long line of failures, created by Yoru to do her bidding. Her failed prototypes are fought in the school basement, and are little more than legion with a human appearance. Yoru herself explains away the whole Takamori Suzuki thing. This student really did die in an accident. No scare quotes necessary, so she implanted false memories in everyone on campus so her pawn would integrate easier. Suzuki was clearly investigating rumors of the otherworld when he died, so it really seemed like they were setting up the protagonist to be an ethereal being wearing the face of Chio's brother. It would thematically rhyme quite nicely with what we find out about Sora, but ultimately the Deus Ex Machina of magical brain manipulation ends up being a bit of an unsatisfactory answer. As our hero is born from the Monarch of Woe, they're unable to exist if Sora and Yoru were vanquished. An unnamed god exists behind a gate, with whom Yugo has been attempting to make contact. This god may have the power to break the cycle. There's also a little bit of a romance subplot going on. Unlike Persona and its contemporaries, you can't be everybody's big boy boyfriend, because not everybody's into you. Kokoro's route is explicitly romantic, while Shinya's route has strong implications of a possible queer romance. And finally, on some routes, Sora devours Shinya and then cruelly forces you to fight a zombified facsimile. His combat barks beg for death, and it's pretty grim stuff. We also find out about what makes our buddies tick along the way. Delicate and prone to crying as a child, Nozomi was the frequent target of bullies. Her best friend Hikari always stood by her and stood up for her. One day, Nozomi's bullies stole her backpack and hid it in a public park, which, according to urban legend, was haunted. Too afraid to retrieve it herself, Hikari goes to get it just as the sun begins to set. Long story short, Hikari's body is found that night in the undergrowth, the victim of a child killer. In the wake of this tragedy, Nozomi strengthened her resolve to become more like the best friend she admired so much. Ultimately, this leads to an identity crisis in which she fears that working on her development is nothing more than a hollow imitation. And hey, we're all hollow imitations. You gotta fake it till you make it. And I don't mean that in the CEO grindset mentality that Monarch pushes. Everybody has to fake it until they feel a sense of comfort and satisfaction about their identity. And to do so is a lifelong journey. Nozomi asks, aren't I still pretending to be something I'm not? But that's always the first step. Shinya was the survivor of horrific abuse at the hands of his mother, who eventually decided to give him up for adoption while he was a teenager. To really twist the knife, she made Shinya phone up all of his relatives and beg one of them to take him in. Few were willing or able to adopt a teenager, but he was eventually taken in by his distant relatives, Sora and Yugo. While Shinya is fiercely loyal to the Jingus, he feels unworthy to truly call himself a member of their family due to his low sense of self-worth. Yu and Shinya end up having a very frank discussion in which Shinya grapples with the idea of hating one's family and the paradox of loving someone to whom you're opposed. Scion to the Date group, Ryutaro's grandfather was the architect behind the Academy's design. Once his grandfather retired and his money-obsessed father and elder brother took the reins, the family business grew into a booming real estate agency. When the father-son duo moved overseas, Ryutaro wished to stay behind. His mother supported his decision and stayed with him so he could continue his childhood in Japan, but disaster struck when his mother died in an earthquake. From then on, he was raised by his grandfather, who imparted on him his ideals of building design. He wishes to take back his family's company and use it to build accessible housing for everybody. His motivation is to steal the hearts of others by doing good for the world. Kokoro had difficulty developing language skills and was nonverbal until the age of 5. But she read actively, eventually becoming a child prodigy. Her mother was initially happy. It's so hard to be in the gifted program. But eventually her mother walked out on the family, and her friends walked out on her after they were bullied for being her friend. She feels that she hurt everyone around her simply by existing, and ultimately believes that no one person can ever fully understand another. She's not wrong, but that's what makes human connection so special. Ultimately, each villain is a foil, a dark mirror to each of your allies. Kurama's unabashed pride is in contrast to Nozomi putting up a false front of confidence. Tsumabuki uses envy to disseminate suffering, while Ryutaro uses gluttony to take what he wants, in one instance generously stealing the pain of Tsumabuki's students to allow them a chance to escape. Subaru has a hatred of everyone around him, in opposition to Kokoro's hedgehog dilemma, unwilling to get close to anyone in fear of hurting another or being hurt herself. And then there's the twins and Shinya, two horny girls versus his innocent chastity? No, I'm just kidding. Really, it's about both of their families. Shinya is trying to process the hatred he feels for his abusive biological parents, while the twins are navigating an unnatural and taboo love. And then finally there's Kakeru and our hero, two devoted big brothers, but Kakeru wishes to achieve his goals without regard to anyone around him, while our hero just wants to make the best possible future for everybody. This is pretty by-the-numbers stuff, but it's pretty fun to see in practice here. Okay, look, I get what Monarch is going for. Touch the hearts of each of your companions to redouble their spirits, right? You do feel closer to each of the characters at the end, but there's gotta be a more efficient way than repeating the same scenario 4 times with minimal changes. Put Kakeru's time manipulation to better use, and send us on a voyage through alternate timelines, a montage hitting only the most important plot beats, unabridged Cliff Notes versions where you've explored different possibilities, but you learn solidarity is the key to success. You can even keep some of the boss battles. But ultimately this would cut out the grind, reducing Monarch's duration of 100+ hours to a scant 60. Heaven forbid! Monarch's emphasis on the grind is really just cynical. But nurvuss, Nier Replicant is one of your favorite games of all time. Doesn't that game's second half do the exact same thing? Yes, it does. Look, I'll be the first to tell you that Yoko Taro would benefit from a deft editor. However, Nier does give the player more to do than Monarch, with its open fields, heart-wrenching side quests. It also doesn't ratchet up the monster's levels with each loop, allowing the player to choose whether to dawdle or make a straight dash to the end. But I mean, ultimately it's okay to just like one thing more than another. We're all hypocrites, none of us are without sin, and the sooner we can all accept that, the better. Once you've made it through all 4 paths of Act 2, you're shown what appears to be Ideal's Shattering, as Vanitas looks on, amused. Kakeru appears before us once more, and urges us to keep going to save Chiyo. With his urging, the true power of vanity emerges. Animakinesis, the manipulation of souls. It turns out that Kakeru truly is dead and gone, and our power is just so strong we're able to make use of his time travel from holding on to his memory. It's a shaky explanation, but okay, fine. With Kakeru's parting words that this is the final hurrah, the opening theme starts up, and we're surrounded by images of our friends on screens, calling us back from the brink. And with that, we're teleported back to the end of Act 1, just before Chiyo's fatal tangle in the other world. Our experiences spill out of us and overwhelm Chiyo. She realizes we're not truly her brother, but the sibling bond between you can't be denied. Vanitas shows up, impressed with your resolve. We get the gang back together, share our memories, reassemble the TSC. If we work together, we can get our happy ending, so saith Chiyo. Whatever's beyond the gate is ours for the taking. Shinya informs us that the gate will only open to those who've overcome every monarch, and we have, save for Sora. To reach the gate, we'll have to locate an arcane sign. And with that, we're left to locate the sign on our own, but you've probably noticed it by now. That's right, the signal bar of the game's very own cell phone menu screen. Strange characters that resemble numbers, the hash key and the star key, have been appearing across the signal bar with each monarch you've overcome. And at this point of the story, you finally have enough symbols to dial an entire phone number. And once you do, the TSC are whisked to the other world. Towering above the party is, indeed, a gleaming white gate. Resembling ivory or bone, it's as luxurious as it is unwelcoming, barring our hero's access. But it cannot be denied. The gate is real, which means there must be something on the other side of it.
This is simply a matter of drawing the current story to a proper close.
Yugo?
Come here, Shinya. You have a role to play as a member of the Jingu family.
What role?
The role we play for the world.
Yugo appears, his memories restored, revealing his true identity to be Hugo Cromwell, the occultist HC who authored the Cromwell reports we've been picking up.
What are you talking about?
Both you and Hugo are worthy of opening the gate, as he too has previously dominated each monarch himself. He's flanked by Sora and Yoru, the former enemies, united in their original goal, to conquer none other than you. But why? Hugo elucidates.
You are the monarch of vanity, or rather a pale imitation of it. It seems you finally comprehend the truth. He is vanity incarnate, playing at personhood. There is no value, no dignity in his life as a human. Yoru created you after countless failures. You've seen your hollow brethren, haven't you? Only one thing separates you from them. The reason you have an ego and will is because you possess the core of the Monarch of Vanity. You, Tristia, and Yoru are alike in one respect. You are free to develop an ego and a will. Imitate humans all you like. But you will never be one, no matter how much you look or act the part.
The party gathers around us. Whether an artificial human or a real boy, it matters not. Your friendship for each other cannot be denied, nor overcome. Hugo warns the party that the being on the other side of the gate is unfathomable, capable of ending the world. He can sense that the party are good people, but he cannot allow our hero to continue to exist. He asks you to surrender, but it's not your choice to make. Chio and your friends will not allow it. At this point, Hugo drops his mask of benevolence and becomes actively hostile, accusatory. A typical boomer, invested in maintaining the status quo to ensure there's never a chance for the younger generation to change things for the better. The stakes are high, but I like how the fate of the world doesn't hang in the balance here. In fact, in a nice reversal, it's our antagonists who claim that it does. They're lying, and we know they're lying. Monarch's story is ultimately rather anarchic. No authority figure is worthy of your trust.
I shall purge this world clean of your filthy existence. Bear with me. Your compliance will not be necessary.
I refuse to meet a wretched and miserable end alone. You are my child, after all. If I have to go down, then I'll drag you to the depths of hell with me.
So you enter a boss battle with Sora, Yoru, and Hugo all together. By the end, you and Hugo have fought to the point of exhaustion, and though you're barely in shape to continue fighting, it's a Pyrrhic victory at best for Hugo. His weird sister wives are down for the count, while you've got your buddies and Legion to back you up. Despite this, Hugo makes one last gambit. With the last of his strength, he lunges in a desperate attempt to decapitate our hero once and for all. But he's stopped at the last minute by Vanitas? Vanitas expresses pity for Hugo.
The second you threw your own wish out the door, you gave up your wish, your deepest desire. You quenched what was left of your heart's deepest fire. For years did your brittle ideals subside. They couldn't take having their purpose denied. Your prided principles have perished.
And with this, his fragile ideals shatter for good, voiding his pact and banishing Soru and Yoru, or Tristia, back into hibernation. But as we've learned from the previous 4 loops, when Tristia vanishes, so does our hero. Vanitas encourages the party to act quickly, open the gate, and wish for our return. But the party is dissatisfied with this solution. They don't want to wish you back. They don't want you to disappear at all. Chio, understanding now that you are in fact a monarch, offers to become your pact bearer to keep you in a corporeal state. Chio's pact is a small glimmer, but it's not quite enough. So one after another, all of your friends come together as co-pact bearers. Their joint ideal is smaller than those we've encountered before, but it's enough to keep you here for now. However, now that you are no longer playing it human, you'll only exist within the other world. To truly live, they'll have to go beyond the gate and wish for you to become a real boy. But before this, we have one last intermission. Chio feels bad for Hugo and takes him back to the infirmary, which gives us one final chance to talk to people and grind before the grand finale. More like grind finale, am I right? You get to have a little debrief with the team. There's some pretty fun dialogue where the TSC gets jealous of what happened in each of the divergent timelines, and Accuse you of being a tomcat?
Is something wrong, Nozomi? What's on your mind?
I was just thinking about the memories we got from the Vice President's power. He's, kind of a smooth operator, isn't he?
Agreed. He gets along with everyone exceedingly well.
Now that you mention it, he did keep telling everyone about how special they were.
He's given out so many specials, he may as well be a bulk discount store.
Woof. Not looking good for you, Mr. VP. Those were different timelines, so that'll get you off the hook for now. But watch out. Unless you want to end up shanked in a dark alley by one of your special friends.
And finally, Kokoro raises a salient point. If you're the Monarch of Vanity, then what is Vanitas? Once you're ready, the party returns to the gate, and opening it, they find...
So this is the other side of the gate?
The hell? There's nothing here.
Nothingness upon nothingness. A world of empty void.
Silent, spacious, still. I'm sure it's more boring than you had expected. It's hard to look out there and not feel dejected. Does this supposed god even exist? We've a philosopher here in our midst. In a certain sense, yea, but another sense, nay.
It's Vanitas. He's the god, duh. His true form has been locked behind the gate due to an unspecified human's wish many years ago. So he's been piloting the stuffed bunny like a drone to communicate with you. So what's his deal? Well, he was lonely and bored. He just wanted some excitement and some buddies to hang out with. He does make one thing explicitly clear. He never actually said that he was the Monarch of Vanity, nor did he ever claim to be a monarch. He simply didn't comment when it was speculated that he was. And with that, he reveals his true form. Yog-Sothoth, Lovecraft's Dunwich horror. It's a little... Come on, we're clearly in Persona 1 territory here. But okay. Kokoro's familiar with Yog-Sothoth from her occult readings and alerts the party that he is, in fact, an evil god. Before he's willing to hear our wish, Yog-Sothoth challenges us to one final battle.
Relay them unto me with all that you are, body and mind. Relay your souls unto me in full.
We enter the real final boss battle really for real this time. Old Yoggers will send all 10 monarchs after you as his party members, but he'll only bring out 3 at a time. When you defeat one, another will teleport in from one of the gates on either side of the battlefield. It's a pretty challenging fight. You need to be pretty careful to isolate and gang up on each of the monarchs before you think of approaching Yog-Sothoth. If you're not fully buffed up, and even if you are, he's capable of ending the battle pretty quickly, so you don't want his buddies making things more complicated. Once the monarchs and Yog are overcome, he yields. A god of his word, he offers to hear your wish. You're presented with 3 options. To become human, to revive Dr. Kakeru, or to remove all distortions. And it's a little strange that they present this to you. If you try to revive Kakeru, Yog refuses, as this is a joint wish between your comrades, who wish for your humanity. If you wish to remove all distortions, Yog also won't do that, because it would bridge our world with the other world, resulting in an apocalypse unfit for human survival. So we wish to become a real boy. And our wish is granted. It's funny to me that Kokoro is so quick to describe Yog-Sothoth as an evil god before that final fight, as he seems like kind of a solid bro. I guess the charitable read is that, as Vanitas, he became attached to you and your well-being, Or maybe we're just not meant to think about it. We cut to the scene that we saw at each end of Act 2. But this time,
Hey! Come on! Hurry up!
it's a sweet ending, and it's great that Monarch avoids the old JRPG trope of the heroic sacrifice. But let's consider the implications for a moment. I can't think of anything more nightmarish than being pulled from the abyss, given corporeal form, and then told I had to attend high school. But more importantly, where's our guy gonna go? Is he supposed to go live with Chio and her family? They probably don't want that, right? Have we just created a nasty schoolboy with no place to go? Well, do your best out there, little guy. And that's the end of Monarch. Kinda. There's no New Game Plus, but you can load back into the school after the final battle. Now devoid of mist, you can run around and check on your fellow students, pick up any notes you've missed along the way. The barrier's not actually gone, of course, but the main event is more grinding! Monarch challenges you to confront Yog-Sothoth again for a second wish, and to do so, you'll have to fight every Monarch over again. But without pack-bearers, how would you do that? Well. Well. You may have experimented with dialing random numbers early on. Here you can see me calling 1-800-BUTTS, only to be confronted with an unwinnable battle against level 99 foes. Now that you're probably close to level 99 yourself, you can start taking on some of these random high-level battles. The last digit of a random number you dial corresponds to each of the 7 deadly sins, plus woe and night. Each time you fight one of these themed super battles, you might get a Monarch's phone number to drop. The game even encourages players to share numbers to avoid grinding. I did not grind for the Monarch's phone numbers. That's too much even for me. Being a fake gamer boy, I looked them up online, and I did all 9 level 99 Monarch Super Boss challenges. They took me a long time. Each is a lengthy fight, and since 99 is the max level, you can't out-level them. You've grinded yourself down into a fine nub. It's all a matter of strategy now. So you beat them all, and that allows you to call the gate and visit Yog one more time.
A repeat return! Remarkable! But you did quash and quell the Monarchs. I can't quarrel or question your qualifications. Consider, however, that in this coming conflict, your companions cannot contribute to your cause. And of course, I won't be holding back. You've beaten me once. I'll remember that fact. Failing this time will mean your removal, but triumph once more, and you'll earn my approval. Triumph here, and I will grant you one more wish.
It's the same fight as it was, but this time all your foes are level 99. The super boss of all super bosses, this fight takes a really long time. If you don't make any mistakes, it takes about half an hour, and you better believe I died a few times near the end. Ultimately, it took me about 90 minutes to hit my perfect run. And you're granted your final wish. You can choose between maxed out sin levels, which you probably already have, a whole mess of spirit points, and you probably have a maxed out party already, the ability to revive Dr. Kakeru, or the ability to revive Sora. I can pick up what Monarch's putting down, so I chose to revive the good doctor. And you get this cute little cutscene where Kakeru walks back into the infirmary as if nothing happened, you and your buddies overjoyed to see him.
Hey there, Vice Pres. Something wrong?
And that's it. He takes healing duties back over from Dr. Shironeko, but he doesn't have anything new to say, and you don't have any more game to play. But I guess if you're sick enough to continue fighting for no reward, he'll be there to dole out mental stabilizers when the going gets tough. But I couldn't just end things there. I couldn't just end this video without finding out what happens if you revive Sora instead. I'm a professional, damn it. So I suited back up, reloaded my save, and did the Yogg Super Boss one more time. And with the boss defeated, I chose to bring Sora back. And you'll never guess what happens. Freaking nothing. Sora appears in the infirmary, sad that Yugo's in a coma. Ostensibly, this is meant to be the real Sora who died in the 1970s, so you might expect her to be quite shocked to exist in present day and find that her devoted husband is aged 50 years. Or could she actually be Tristia given human form, not unlike our protagonist? Well, you'll never find out because you can't interact with her at all. At this point, you're probably wondering, was Yogg Sothoth being truthful when he stated you'd only get one more wish? What happens if you go back and challenge the monarchs and him a third time? Well...
But come now, kid. Be reasonable. You're asking me the unfeasible.
Because even I have limits, okay? So, I don't know. What do I like about Monarch? I mean, the music bangs, because of course it does. Tsukasa Masuko wrote most of it, and he always rocks. The boss battle vocal tracks also go pretty hard. They're not by Tsukasa, though. They're a collaboration with a group called Kamatsubaki Record. I had to look them up to see exactly what their deal is, and I found out that they're a stable of virtual idols. I'm not really sure what to make of that. At first I didn't like it at all, but then I thought, well, all music image is manufactured anyway, so what the hell? And then I looked at the liner notes that came with my copy of Monarch, which gave profiles for all these imaginary, forever 17-year-old girls, and I got kind of grossed out thinking about the ramifications. There's something a little unsavory about creating eternal maiden pop idols. But Monarch is, in a sense, a story about the rejection of Confucian filial piety in favor of the found family. It's a concept that many in the queer community will be intimately familiar with. A network of close friends who, though not related by blood, provide unconditional love and support to one another. Found family is essential to individuals who find themselves stigmatized and rejected by their biological family after coming out, but it's also something wonderful that everybody should have, regardless of sexuality. With the exception of Nozomi, each of our companions has a complicated familial upbringing, usually resulting in an antagonistic relationship with their parents. It's the trauma of these emotional scars that leads each of them to the true student council, be they pact bearer or pact breaker. Each member is doing their utmost to survive as best they can, and they find acceptance and understanding in each other. Shinya's a really important example of Monarch's found family theming. Earlier, we talked about his abusive upbringing and his complicated feelings towards his adoptive parents. Throughout the game, he struggles with the paradox of hating one's own family and loving his former rivals, ultimately stating, "You can care for others for who they are, whether they're family or not." What's also important here is Shinya's implied queerness. He's incredibly androgyne, and during the pre-release, his feminine appearance sparked so much discussion that Furyu had to release a statement clarifying that he was, in fact, a he. However, they also stated that his battle attire is based on the Queen chess piece. As I mentioned earlier, there's hints of romance between the protagonist and Shinya in his route, and much of his dialogue makes him just as much a canon love interest as Kokoro.
Yuko and Sora and... Special?
Do you really think that? Please, don't disappear. Please don't leave me. Without you, I...
But let's restate, Shinya's queerness is implied, and therefore subjective and up to interpretation. But one thing is explicitly clear. He was abandoned by his parents, his adoptive parents were no longer able to provide a loving environment for him, and ultimately he found solace and a place to belong in his found family of the TSC. On the other hand, Monarch does have a small number of explicitly queer NPCs, and unfortunately the game is not very nice to them. Okay, some setup. Monarch has a relatively small cast of supporting NPCs. They're basically on par with your average Welcome to Corneria townsfolk, but each is a named student or faculty member, and speaking to them for the first time adds their profile to your phone menu. Some of these profiles, denoted by crystal icons, have some text redacted. Finding their corresponding crystal out in the world and retrieving it, so long as you've met the required sin threshold, grants a permanent stat boost to the party and unredacts the text, revealing the character's alter ego. This is treated as a bit of salacious gossip. You're privy to their innermost secrets, as if surreptitiously reading their diaries. Enter Perrine. Perrine is, like all of the other students, a real nothing character. She has a line of dialogue where she refers to herself as the cutest girl in school. Find her alter ego, and her profile is updated to dead name and misgender her. Even if Perrine's unredacted profile simply read Perrine is trans, that too would be not great. Her existence would still be treated as a shocking twist, a dirty little secret. In fact, we actually get to see this come up twice more with Koichi and Mirai, two students whose alter egos reveal them to be gay and asexual, respectively. It's a cheap, deliberate othering of queer identity, and for no real reason, since these characters are completely inconsequential, with zero bearing on the plot. I don't think this was done in hatred, but this comes up again and again in video games. And from what I understand, it's come up in multiple other games by this publisher, particularly the Caligula Effect duo. It's boneheaded writing, and it's a boneheaded move for NISA to localize this the way that they did. Transphobes don't at me, trans rights are human rights. Monarch is ultimately an interesting failure. A game that tried to be transgressive, and at first seemed to be succeeding, but lacked confidence in its audience and itself. I really wanted to feel something from this story. It's got lots of poignant moments and opportunities for existential reflection, both which are tragically undercut by the half-baked inclusion of time travel. By the time you revive Kakeru in the postgame, there's nobody left to grieve. Every sad moment has been erased. You certainly earned your happy ending, but at the expense of any gravitas the story may have had. I'm not asking for a total downer of an ending, but a little bit of bittersweetness would have been nice. A reminder that, no matter your efforts, you can't have everything. But hey, you know what they say. Furyu twice, shame on you.
Did you seriously make this video just so you could make that joke?
So, yeah, I hope you like my first attempt at a video. It is the first time I've ever tried this. I mean, you may have heard my podcast work in the past or seen some of my written stuff, but laying things out in a linear video format takes a lot longer than you would think, or at least a lot longer than I thought that it would. What else? I guess if you liked it, you could subscribe to my channel and click the like button. Apparently that helps. Tell your friends. If you're going to play Monarch, If you're going to play Monarch, first of all, maybe don't. But if you really need to play it, I hear it runs horrible on Switch and PS4, like single-digit frame rate in places, which is shocking. But like, I don't know. If you're a real sicko and you played all these like Furyu or even some of the newer Falcom games on a PlayStation 4 or a Switch, you'll know how bad a game that looks like it's a late PS2 or early PS3 game will run on the supercomputer hardware of the mid 2010s. Monarch's performance on PS5 is fine. I didn't have any frame rate hiccups or anything like that, but there were really quite long load times. I edited a lot of them out of this video so you wouldn't tell, really, because I just didn't want to show you a loading screen for 5 to 10 seconds at a time. But yeah, it's not optimized for anything. Anyway, play SMT5. It's good.